Have you thanked the Lord today for every good thing that He's done in your life? Well, listen to this verse from Ephesians 1, verse 16. And in Ephesians 1, verse 16, the Apostle Paul writes, I cease not to give thanks for you, making mention of you in my prayers. Paul is talking about the Ephesians, people whom he loves. And he says, I cease not to give thanks for you. Have you given thanks for the people that are in your life today? This word give thanks is the Greek word eucharistia, and that's very important. The word you is a little Greek word which describes something that's good or something that's swell. It describes a good disposition. The word hue, always the idea of something wonderful, emotions that are swell and are pleasing. And an example would be when Jesus came down to the River Jordan to be baptized. And the Bible tells us the heavens opened, and of course we know that the Holy Spirit descended on Jesus like a dove, and a voice was heard which said, this is my beloved Son in whom I am, do you remember what it says? Well pleased. That word well is the same word, the word you. It describes something swell, an immense pleasure, a good disposition. So when God said that He was well pleased with Jesus, it meant He couldn't have been more pleased. That word well means it was just swell. As far as God was concerned, there was nothing finer, there was nothing better, there was nothing more pleasurable than His own Son, and He was the Greek word, well pleased. Now in this phrase, give thanks, the Greek word eucharistia, the first part of the word is the word you, this same word, which describes a good disposition, to be swell. It's talking about great gratification, satisfaction, something wonderful, wonderful emotions. But the second part of the word, charistia, comes from the Greek word charis. And the word charis is the Greek word for grace. That's where we get the word grace. Every time in the New Testament when the Apostle Paul writes and says, grace be unto you, the Greek says, charis be unto you. That word grace is the word charis. And in this particular phrase, eucharistia, the word charistia comes from this word charis, the word grace. So when you compound the two words together, charis, it forms the word eucharistia, which here is translated give thanks, but here's really what it means. It describes a person who feels so good about the person that he's thinking about or praying for that he just cannot contain his emotions. He feels swell. He feels gratified. The very thought of that person, oh my goodness, it's just swell. It's so pleasing. It's so well. Connect that with the word charis, grace, and it tells us this person doesn't have to force himself to say thank you, but like grace, it freely just flows from his heart. He can't restrain what he feels. It's like grace. It just flows out of him. So when Paul says, I thank God for you, he's not sitting down with his list and saying, okay, now I need to go through my list. I need to make sure that I say thank you for everybody. But rather just the very thought of them. And like grace, all of these emotions begin to swell up in his heart, and it's not easy for him to say thank you because the thanksgiving is just billowing out of his heart, freely pouring out of him. Just the thought of the Ephesians makes him want to thank God for them. Now I want to translate this verse for you. Listen to how this verse can be paraphrased or translated. I would call this a pretty loose translation, but it really conveys the idea. Thanking God for you is so easy. It just flows out of my heart every time I think of you. In fact, I never take a break from letting God know how I feel about you. Isn't that powerful? I'm going to say it again. Thanking God for you is so easy. It just flows out of my heart every time I think of you. In fact, I never take a break from letting God know how I feel about you. Have you prayed for people today? Have you said thank you today? When you think of the people that you love, does it just flow out of your heart? If it does, why don't you connect that with prayer today? Just take a few minutes just to let the grace of God and all those good feelings you feel about people flow out of your heart as you thank God for the people that He's put in your life today, and there's a lot of them. Just take a few minutes today to reflect on how God has been so good to you.